Carl here from Metalwani, and this evening I'm incredibly grateful to be sharing in the company of Alison Wright. And though she has several passions in her life, including but not limited to being a proud member of the metal community for over 35 years, as well as being an ardent fan of Alice Cooper, if I'm not mistaken, Alison is
Absolutely.
the trustee of the Sophie Lancaster Foundation, which she has been kind enough to share her time to talk with us about tonight. And Alison, once again, thank you so much for sharing this time with me. How are you? How was your day?
Oh, I am doing great. I am a little bit gutted right now because as we're speaking, I know that there are literally hundreds and thousands of people getting ready to go to download. I am a little bit on the jealous side. I can't make it this year. But to all those about to rock, we salute you. But thank you for having me here today. I'm so chuffed to be spending some time with you.
My pleasure, my sincere pleasure. And if it's any consolation, I'm not at download either, so I get to enjoy your company. We're good.
The pain. Yeah.
So before we jump into everything, I've been enjoying speaking back and forth with you while preparing for this interview. And one of the things I love learning about you is the music you've identified with across the years, this thing that was once seen as a phase you were supposed to grow out of. Actually, the way in which you bookmark times and places in your life and in your memories. And I resonate with this sentiment because I share it also, which is why I'd love to hear your thoughts on, what do you think it might be about music in particular that helps you map out these experiences in your life?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, if we go back, so I was actually a metalhead before I was a metalhead. I used to buy the Now tapes. That kind of dates me. And it was always the more rocky I've discovered tunes that I actually liked on there. Eventually sort of coming around through the likes of Bon Jovi and some softer rock and discovering Alice Cooper, and then finding some heavier things that I liked. Metallica, Megadeth was a big favorite of mine, and so on. And the thing is that I remember sort of the albums being released. I remember sitting in my room and, getting excited, reading Kerrang, reading Raw, if you remember that one, watching, videotaping Raw Power, Phil Alexander on a Saturday. Well, it was a Saturday morning. I'd be watching that, and you just hook onto, don't you? It's the memories that you have resonate, and you just remember the times that you were there. So, particularly as we're talking about download, my first festival was Monsters of Rock it was 1991. There we go. AC/DC, Metallica supporting, Motley Crue. Let me see, it was Queensryche and the Black Crowes. So one day on the inside of the track, my first festival, and I can remember that pretty much as clearly as I can remember 2013, which was my first sort of return and my first download. So it just pins in, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I love the way you phrase that. And by the way, I'm also quite the Bon Jovi fan, so I'm with you.
It's almost one of those. It's kind of like, it feels like a confession, sort of. Oh, like I've listened to some Nickelback too,
Well, thank you for sharing. And when we talk about music, and in particular the heavier genres and subgenres, and that conversation around how they can represent a great deal more than simply the present, but actually capture memories across entire lifetimes and represent identities. For me, it's impossible not to think of the Sophie Lancaster Foundation. So for anyone listening who may be unaware, would you be so kind as to share with us why the Sophie Lancaster Foundation was set up, what its core aim is, and how you came to be involved?
Oh, okay. So the Sophie Lancaster Foundation, it was set up by a powerhouse of a woman called Sylvia Lancaster, who very tragically lost her daughter Sophie at the hands of a group of lads who one night when she was walking with her boyfriend, they decided that they would set upon these two because of the way that they looked. They screamed abusive terms at them, some of which we've reclaimed. And you know, if you see our merch around, you might see Mosher, Weirdo, Freak, and we're reclaiming that for ourselves. But these lads, they first attacked her boyfriend, and then in trying to protect him, she was attacked as well, and tragically she died from her injuries. So her mother, in her memory, set up the Sophie Lancaster Foundation to bring hope from hate, and to set up a foundation that would educate and would enable people to better understand the alternative cultures, you know, alternative subcultures, and knock out some of the prejudice against them. So in terms of how did I get involved? Well, I first of all, I mean, I followed the story from the very moment it hit the news. It felt very real and very raw to me, because this was my community. These are my people. Yeah. You know, if I'd have lived in the area where Sophie was, she could have been one of my friends. And so, although I've only recently joined the foundation to help support it, it's always been there in terms of I've wanted to support it. I've wanted to support it's the community that kind of made me feel safe when I was younger. Because, you know, I have never, when I've been at any gigs, I used to go to gigs a lot on my own. And as a youngish female, that can be quite daunting. I have never felt worried in the community. It's always external. And so I want to support the same community that supported me for all these years.
That's a beautiful way of articulating it. And thank you for sharing that, Alison. And, you know, one of the things the website for the foundation features is a comprehensive timeline, right from the year Sophie was born all the way to the foundation's inception, and then through to 2020 at the peak of the pandemic. And this is where the timeline sort of ceases a little bit. Now in 2023, having mostly emerged from COVID, for many people out there, its impact still lingers. So I wonder, what can you tell us about where the foundation stands in 2023, and for better or worse, what impact have the last 3 years had on the work that you do?
Yeah, so I mean, the foundation is incredibly small. It's one of those, it's small, but it's mighty. Its reach is huge for the size that it is. And, you know, we can't lie. The pandemic hit us in a big way. We weren't able to get out in quite the same way, although we continued a lot of our work online. But we don't get any funding from government. We don't. Everything that we get, we have to kind of go out and kind of earn for ourselves. So, you know, in COVID, that was very much restricted. I think also it's worth pointing out the death of Sylvia last year, an incredibly sort of sad part of the foundation's history. And it did leave us as a group trying to work out, you know, do we still resonate? Do we still have purpose? Do we still continue? And resoundingly, we had to, you know, to be a voice for the community that we represent. It is tough. As you know, as I've just said, that the funding side of things is incredibly difficult. And, you know, I will say, if I may, right now, we are incredibly grateful to anybody that donates, that buys our merchandise, that comes and sees us, that does a fundraiser for us. And just a massive thank you, if I can, because it makes such a difference. Without that, the foundation just doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, I guess the reason, I mean, I mentioned COVID specifically was, in our post-COVID world, obviously it's forced many organizations, including your own, to rethink their structures, sometimes from the ground up. And for example, we were speaking of it earlier, where we saw, from myself and many others saw online, how the financial and practical implications of the changes to this year's Download Festival found the Sophie Lancaster in a position where, for a moment there, it was not feasible for you to attend. Now, that being said, it's wonderful to see that this has since been resolved and the foundation will be there. But the response online is incredibly heartwarming to see around you. Yeah, sorry.
I can't even, because I saw, like, I saw the announcement go onto Facebook and onto Twitter about us not going. And then, I'm not going to lie, I was actually in tears seeing the response. Now, I want to point out that the Download team have been phenomenal throughout, and I don't want anything bad about them. I mean, them coming and sort of after such feedback from the community, and like I say, I was literally in tears at the scope of that, how many people felt it and responded. And it was amazing that that the organisers did come, and they approached us literally the following day to help us out, because I'm not sure that they even realised how difficult it would make things for us. As I say, there's a belief, I think, that the foundation is bigger than it is. And the impact would have been huge. It would have been huge. I mean, as I think I've said, a vast chunk of the revenue for the foundation comes from selling merch at festivals. The other amazing thing about festivals is actually being out with the community that we're wanting to support. So we want to, as painful as it is, we want to hear the stories. We want to hear what the community wants from us, what they need from us, and also to be able to speak out about what we are actually doing, because I know, although we have the website, it's not always clear what we're doing and where the money's going, and where are we driving the foundation. So we're thrilled to be at Download, and like I say, entirely humbled by the response.
That's what I wanted to highlight is obviously it was a scary moment, but the response from the community and from Download themselves was genuinely heartwarming to see. Even though it's a cautionary tale, we came out the right side of it. But also, while we're on the subject of festivals, Alison, and with festival season only days away now, where can supporters or anyone interested in learning more about the work you do find the Sophie Lancaster Foundation over the coming weeks and months?
Sure. So there's a big old list, and I might scratch my head for a moment, but obvious. So clearly we're at Download. We're at 2,000 Trees. Of course, we're at Bloodstock. They're one of our biggest supporters, and we actually have the Sophie Lancaster staged there. Amazing support from them. Stone Deaf, we're at them for the first time, so I'm kind of excited about that one. I was a little bit involved right at the beginning when Steve had his wacky idea about pulling that one together, so I'm really excited about that one. I think I called it Stone Deaf because I think that's what it was called originally, but it's now Stone Dead, isn't it? And we're at I have to mention this one also, as usual, we're at the Festival of Gothica in Leeds. So one of our trustees, the more than gorgeous Elizabeth Rose, she actually manages that one, and we will be representing there. I've probably missed one, but what I will do after, if it's all right with you, I will chuck our list at you, and if you include it, that would be grand.
It would be
we're at lots of places.
Awesome. Pleasure, no problem at all, and thank you for sharing that. I promise I've only got a couple of questions left for you, and I can leave it to you.
Oh no.
But when thinking about those coming weeks and months and even years, I know that the foundation, as you mentioned earlier on, you've utilized training and education as one of the ways to communicate the work you do and the message that the foundation sends. And as you said, all your educational resources and training were transferred online. But looking to the future in 2023 and beyond, what, if anything, can you tell us about what the foundation has in store as it continues the work that it does?
Yeah, no. So I think we've got some really exciting stuff coming, which I'm kind of excited to share. So if I go back to the what I see as the three pillars of the foundation, to educate, to advocate, and to support. So education, we have our two wonderful educators who go into schools and businesses. I mean, it tends to be secondary school, which is the most commonly sought after, and run workshops in schools about, anti-hate, about hate crimes, and as was Sylvia's objective, knocking out those prejudices around people in the alternative community. So we educate. We're about to launch in September, and again, this is super exciting. So rather than going in and doing the workshops ourselves, we're looking at launching a train the trainer. Nice. So that I mean, this is just phenomenal, so that we can train up teachers in schools who can then deliver to their own students or to other staff, and that can be within academies of school. It can be across schools. So it's, we're getting the message out, and it's in a fairly financially sensible way for schools, or accessible way, should I say. So that's super exciting. That's coming in September. Additionally, some of your viewers might be aware that last year we actually ran a hate crime survey. Now, we have just got the results of that survey back and just processed them, and in the next month or so we're going to be releasing the findings from that. I think it's not going to come as a massive surprise that hate crime, certainly within the alternative community, is horrendously underreported. But there'll be more on that coming, like I say, in the next month or so, and also driving through some of the messages from that. It is underreported. We need people to report incidents, and that it is something that it affects people very deeply. We know that hate crimes affect people more than, say, being mugged or having things stolen from them, because it's an attack on them themselves, who they are, rather than, you can justify, you can rationalize in your head, they stole my phone because they wanted a phone and they wanted the money. Whereas when it's about you, that can be really upsetting. So it's important that we get the message out that, it's not acceptable for people to be attacking and abusing people just for being who they are. And that doesn't matter whether it's, on the basis of the protected characteristics as it is at the moment. Being in an alternative community and being abused is not on. So we're working, and that's our advocacy stream, if you like. That's where we're really trying to put some pressure on, so that it gets seen and understood. I think one of the parts that we are looking perhaps more at in the future is about support. So the foundation gets so many calls and communications about what's happening. A child at school is struggling because they're being bullied. What do? And what we really want to be able to do moving forwards is to provide support, whether in a sort of in a considered and consistent way. So a kind of what if on the website, for example, some way of supporting and providing guidance for if these things are happening to you. So that's what we're looking for moving forwards. Obviously, we're going to keep going with our core education. We're going to keep engaging with the police, with other agencies. But yeah, exciting stuff coming.
That's truly exciting.
A lot of work.
Yeah, but it's incredible to hear. It really is incredible to hear. And I promise my final question for you, Alison, is One based on a reality that, as you said, certain listeners may be aware of, but others may be surprised to hear. And it calls back to a lot of what you said there, is that sadly, with views more polarized, hate crimes not adequately considered by the current government, with many of the alternative communities still on the receiving end of this harassment and violence, the work you do as a foundation does seem more necessary than ever. So whether online or in person, if someone listening to this could do something right now, today, how could the alternative community or anyone who wants to get involved support the Sophie Lancaster Foundation at this moment?
Okay, so I think there's two sides to this. Obviously, the biggest one is if you can do a fundraiser, make a donation, buy some merch, enable us to have some funding to keep us going. Anything that takes the worry off us surviving as a foundation allows us more time to actually do the work. So that would be enormous. I would say if you have been a victim of a hate crime, the biggest thing, and I hate saying this, but report it. It's huge that you report it. You don't necessarily have to report it to the police, although you can do. There's an organisation called True Vision, where you don't have to go to a police station. You can just report it, and then it gets logged, and then it is known. And that is another side of, supporting the foundation and supporting yourselves, making sure that your voice is heard. If you do want to volunteer, there are opportunities, and I would encourage you just to contact. There's contact details on the website, and like I say, volunteers and fundraisers always appreciated.
Thank you, Alison. For anyone listening, please do visit the website, SophieLancasterFoundation.com. Make a donation or purchase an item from the website if you're in a position to. If not, they can follow you on social media, share the posts.
Absolutely.
If you're not on social media, simply keep the conversation alive by having it. All links to support the foundation can be found attached within this interview, as well as helplines that Alison spoke of for anyone who suffers from hate crimes. And Alison, thank you once more for your time, your words, and for the work you do as part of the foundation. It really has been my genuine pleasure sharing the time with you this evening, and I wish nothing but the best for you, yours, and the foundation for the rest of the year and beyond, my friend.
Oh, no, Carl, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to have the conversation. We really appreciate it. It's been great.
The pleasure is mine.
All right.